Hello, and welcome back to our kitchen. This is a new episode of Geek Recipe, and my guest today is the Chief Creative Officer of Focus Entertainment, Dessil. Welcome to our kitchen, Dessil.
Thank you, Marco. Nice
Welcome.
to see you here. Thank
Nice
you
to
for
see
this wonderful initiative. It's very exciting to be here. Every single time I speak about video games to my friends and all that, they're like not excited at all. But this time I told them that I was going to do a cooking show, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! This is the best thing we've ever done." So I'm super happy to.
Are you a
do
good
that.
cook?
Well, I'm a better eater than a cook for sure,
okay.
but I mean, I love food, of course, you know, like that's part of the French culture. But I would say that I like cooking, but I would prefer if I am just your assistant today and you lead the way.
That's fine. I'm Enzo's assistant anyway, in cooking, so that's fine. Dessil, today we are going to cook a risotto
Beautiful.
with pumpkin and sausage.
Amazing.
So it's a little bit of a convoluted process, but we'll try to keep things as simple as possible. So the first thing we have to do is cook the pumpkin. So we'll put the pumpkin in the oven, and we're going to spread it around like this because it has to stay in the oven for about 20 minutes or something.
Okay, great.
25 minutes. So whilst we do the rest, we do the talking and we chat a bit. Right, so from Paris, right? From Paris.
Yes, exactly. I came directly from Paris. Sadly, my flight got delayed, but I think these days I'm cursed, so don't take the plane or the train with me, at least for a month.
You were saying earlier that you've been traveling quite a lot recently?
Yeah, definitely. We were at a game camp, so that's like one of the greatest events to meet the French industry, where I was lucky to do a conference on how to transform the promise of your game into something engaging for the players, so that was fun. And the week before, and actually it's very linked to a recent release, we did a shot for Atlas Fallen, a live action shot. Yeah, the third-person action RPG developed by Deck 13, which is an integrated focus studio, so they're part of the family now. So technically this is our first real release as a developer, so we're super proud of it.
Wow.
And let's put the pumpkin into the oven.
let's do this.
This looks nice.
Right. Need to be careful because I've got to stay in favor of the camera, so you know, it's cooking and filming at the same time. Which,
Cooking and filming at the same time, it's tough.
really
Please,
hard.
yeah, this way.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, cool. So
Atlas Fallen, this shoot, and again, 3 hours late on the Eurostar, so I was a bit disappointed, but it was a super nice piece where we have this magician. It's a set that looks like we're in Lord of the Rings, and we have a magician that's looking inside a crystal ball, and he's like, I see, a timeless land filled with dangers, a world covered in sand, and it's very fun, and you think, and people are excited, and the monks around him, you know, like, then there's thunder and wind and all that, and all of a sudden the camera turns and arrives in front of him, and he's like, I see surfing? What the fuck, surfing? You know, and we just completely break the mood, put some Beach Boys like music, and camera just rushes toward the ball, and then we cut to the gameplay of the
really
game.
cool.
So yeah, it's pretty fun, you know, like, because toward the end of the communication, like most of the players, they have learned about the game. We've done the gameplay overviews, we've explained everything. So we try to do something a little different. Yes, of course. That's easy. This I can manage. And it's really important, you know, to try to do something where you step a little bit outside the boundaries and react to what the community is saying. And we realized with Atlas Fallen that one of the things that everybody got excited about is actually the sand surfing. So we try to do something all around that. You know?
All right.
That was pretty fun. Like Evil West, you know, we had this trailer with Danny Trejo that we shot in LA. And the cool thing, like in the comment, we started seeing a lot of people saying like, oh my God, this is like a PS3 game. This is amazing, you know. And we were like, we didn't really think about that as an amazing feature.
You never know what they're gonna like or not.
Exactly, so like, let's embrace it, you know. There is no loot box, there is no currencies, there is everything is just, you know, straight gameplay, pure fun, you know. So we played a little bit around that. So yeah, that's the joys of communication on a game.
All right, so we put the pumpkin in the oven. Now there's two big things we've got to do. We've put the water on the fire for the broth. For the broth, what we're gonna do, we're cheating a bit here.
Okay.
All right. So the real broth should be made with onion, carrots, and celery.
Celery, yes,
right,
of
okay.
course.
Instead, we use this gel that
Okay.
every Italian cook uses to cheat and to do these things a bit faster. So I'm gonna use this. One every couple of liters of water. So I'm gonna put a little bit more than one.
Nice.
And I'm going to ask you to cut the shallot
Of course. Yes, my pleasure.
Alrighty.
If my mother is watching, I made it. I am now a professional cook.
So Dessil, you've been doing a lot of stuff this year, right?
Exactly.
A lot of releases. And it's a bit of a mix, right? There's like some big, ambitious, almost like AAA games, really. And there's a little bit of stuff that's, more indie, more edgy, more, different styles and things. How do you cope with doing these two things at the same time?
So you see this shallot? No, I'm kidding. So it's a very good question, because compared to a lot of other publishers, at Focus we publish a wide diversity of genres and a wide diversity of scopes. I would say that most of the time our games are somewhere between 500K of development budget up until like 30-40 million for the biggest ones. And it's true that it's most of the time a different audience, a different target, and also different challenges. So for us, it's very exciting because the thing that motivates us the most is actually the vision of the developer. If the idea is good and if the team has the production capacity to execute it well, we're gonna get excited. We're gamers first and foremost, so we wanna push for that. Now, something that we did to clarify the differences between all those different pipelines is that a couple of years ago, when we changed our name from Home Interactive to Entertainment with a new logo and rebranding, we actually did a work on our editorial guidelines. So we have 3 series now. The one we're most known for is the Focus series, where we have the biggest games. This is where you will find Space Marine 2, Evil West, Plague Tale, and Atlas Fallen. And on that front, we have bigger budgets, bigger teams as well, and it's probably our most immersive and cinematic experiences, closer to film actually. Like on one side, you have sort of like co-op spectacle that you might find in like Hollywood films. This is the case with Evil West, for example. And on the other side, we have our line that I like to compare to HBO series, where we have something that's grounded fantasy, and something like Plague Tale, Requiem for me, or Banisher, Ghost of New Eden, which will release this year, really fit into that vibe. After that, we have our indie series, which is where you will find games like Dordogne, games like Shady Part of Me, and many other great titles. And for this line, the goal is to nurture future talent, help also the video game industry with newer developers who are doing their first game. But the thing is that help the young rising industry, give their chance to smaller studio, accompany them, into the crazy adventure that is video game development, and also take even more creative risks. I want to say that it's the smaller your budget, and this applies to any developer, if I can give an advice on that, the smaller your budget, the more risks you have to take creatively. Because the super big productions, the AAA,
they gotta play it safe.
Exactly. They have to please to such a wide audience that it's so hard to take risk and be very innovative. Once you know that you have to sell 10 million copies of your game for it to be successful, that's a lot of pressure on the publisher. So what we're trying to do here is to have on one side the creativity of the independent world, but mixed with the know-how of the AAA world. This is what I love about AA or mid-range game, even if I don't like this denomination because it's very budget-oriented, is that you can really take creative risks and at the same time, propose high-quality content. Like Plague Tale is a fantastic example of that.
It's, how do you, is there any balance you try to keep with the catalog, or is it more like when it's ready, And sometimes it just works because it's very balanced, and sometimes it just doesn't.
Yes, definitely. There has to be some things where the uncertainty of developing games hits you when you don't expect it. And that's something, that people struggle to understand, is like the R&D and tech and innovation component of video games. It's so much more complicated than actually filming and editing something, the fact that a player can be interactive on the environment, do things that you haven't expected at first, it requires a lot of testing, a lot of R&D, and I don't know what's the case on the Slitherine side, but it's hard for me to count the title that didn't get delayed on the Focus side, to be honest.
I don't think we've got any title that didn't get delayed at all. What I find interesting of your job, and usually and one of the reasons why we wanted you on the show was that you're really managing all the time to transfer the game's creative vision into your assets, in your marketing, the content you do, and it's not always the case, right? A lot of time there's a big disjointed message between what the game is and what the trailers are and so on. You're doing a good effort in that respect.
Definitely, and I think I like to think that's something that the developers we work with like about us, is that I feel like we really understand their creative vision. Also, when we sign games, we don't do so much work for hire where we're like, okay, some marketing analysis make us think that we should do this game with this studio. It's all about, the vision of the developer. So once you accept that, our role as a publisher is really to accompany the developer from the beginning of their idea up to the release, challenge them, ask them questions, help them solve problem, but never impose a creative vision.
Right.
And this is what translates then also into the marketing assets, because we want to stay true to the vision of the developer. And with Focus, there's the case where a developer discovers an asset online that he hasn't seen before. Never happens.
Cool.
They see every single thing. After that, some developers, they have like a very strong ideas about communication, so they want to be super involved. And some others are just like, okay, we just want to develop the game. We don't want to bother about the communication.
Yeah, there's very different types of developers. Can I ask you to take the wine in the fridge, please?
Oh, the wine. Now we're talking.
I'm looking at Enzo, and Enzo is saying, right, you did the right thing.
So what do we have here? Greco di tuffo.
Greco di tuffo.
I cannot say it properly.
So basically, what we try to do in our recipes is we put together either a Northern Italy recipe with a Southern Italian wine, or vice versa.
I love it.
Right, so we're going to make the risotto here. There's a few things I have to say with the risotto. Risotto is the epitome of the Northern Italian dishes, because Northern Italy has always been rice, right? I think pasta, we started using it during the war or something like that.
Wow,
very, very late. So all my grandparents and so on, it was only rice. And
that's why the arancini or
arancino.
I tried it yesterday at the restaurant. Thank you, Paolo. It was delicious, the best I've ever had.
And the other thing is that in the Northern Italy, we were not used to cook with olive oil. Because
really?
we didn't have, the olives, so it's all butter. So I'll ask you to take the butter back on stage.
Sure. Well, this is actually like French cooking. We have wine, we have butter. I'm feeling at home.
So to cook risotto, we had the broth. We've got the pumpkin in the oven, and we start by putting some butter here. Now, the secret of the correct doses for rice is what you call it, like
handful?
2 handful of rice per person.
Okay.
Plus 1 every 2 people. That's my
grandmother's
secret. So I'll keep that, and I'll bring the tradition on. So yes, we're doing the butter. Then when the butter is slightly cooked, we put the shallot.
Okay.
And then we will put
so it absorbs the butter. And transfers.
Exactly. So then we'll put the sausage and then the rice. We keep it toasting the rice for a bit, and then we start adding the broth later on.
Okay, great. Okay. How do you say sausage in Italian?
Salsiccia.
Salsiccia.
Salsiccia. And it's like in France, every region has its different version of the sausage, right? You've got the merguez, you've got lots of different types.
Exactly.
So we should do a French edition of the Geek Recipe, like.
That would be fantastic, yeah. But you will have still to lead the way, because, as I said again, I'm more an assistant than
you can find someone in Focus who wants to do it, and then you do your own show, and we swap the guests.
We do a crossover, and ask you the question. Sounds great.
So you know, you've got a lot to look forward to. You mentioned Atlas Fallen. Of course, you know, one of the most anticipated games we've got out there is Space Marines 2 is releasing as well, and more, right? So,
Way more, yeah.
so you got like a busy team, but also you take good care of the life cycle of your current product. So it's like, how do you balance that?
It's a very tricky aspect of our resource management because all those games, and we have more and more. In the past, we used to do purely premium games, maybe 1 or 2 DLCs, but we didn't have what we would call live ops today. And more and more, we're starting to have games where we really want to invest in the long run because it suits also the type of game. For example, a title like Insurgency Sandstorm, we've had like 3 years of live ops, or SnowRunner, which is a game where you drive vehicle into like untamed terrains. We are at like season 8 or something like that, and the people love it. So yeah, it's hard to balance because on one side we increased the development time for our games. It used to be around 2-3 years maximum in the old Focus, I want to say. And we took the decision about 3 years ago to increase the development times of our games, to increase quality as well, because there's like an incompressible amount of like work that you have to do in R&D, work that you have to do in polish as well, for the game to be good and for the game to be successful. So managing the live ops in parallel with upcoming games, I must confess it's not an easy task, but we're having more and more. The goal is to create a dedicated team that's going to be focused mainly on that.
On the live ops. Okay.
For a lot of the roles, you know, some of our key people are focused on the live ops, whereas others are going to be more like on games that are about to release. But it's a very tricky thing to balance because a live ops game means so many releases, so many DLC, and for our team of release manager, every DLC is almost like a big release, you know. So we have to be, of course, aware of that.
And you come from kind of the movie industry, kind of, right?
Yes.
You know, so you've got that. Can you give us an idea of how the differences are between the two? You know, not for people involved, but I'll ask you to open this in a minute.
Oh yes, no problem. There's a reason why I moved to the video game industry. So originally I worked more as a director and visual effects supervisor, mostly in fashion and music videos in LA and in France, Paris. And that was super exciting. And one day I got asked to direct the cinematics of a game, Battlefleet Gothic, Armada. And because I used to really like Warhammer, and it was a good friend.
So we've got something in common. We're both Warhammer fans. Then.
Exactly,
Okay.
and strategy game fans. So that's perfect. And so I entered the video game industry, and I saw so much passion and dedication. Like it was like extremely exciting. After that, I joined Focus, and now it's been like 7 years. And yeah, I started directing the trailers, and then went on with creative direction of all the assets, and then more on the publishing side, meeting the developers, having them share their vision, understanding how they work. And today, yeah, mostly on like most of the creative topics, and there's a ton of creative topics when you're working with a developer, but there's still a strong link, of course, to film and communication. And so one of the main differences that I often like to highlight, especially for the people who have always been into the video game industry, is that it's a new industry. And just for that, there is so much youth, so much passion, and so much creation. It's a very young industry. And compared to the film, you don't have, you know, the weight of the glorious creators of the past. Because if you work in writing or in film, it's very hard because you always have those like legendary creators and that are behind you. Whereas in the video game industry, we are writing the pages of history.
Yeah.
And this is like
Everything is
so
ahead of you.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
That
That makes it incredibly exciting. And also, I mean, I don't like to refer to this thing just in terms of like market and business, but today, you know, like it's one of the most growing creative industry. Its width in terms of range is much bigger than music and VOD and TV series combined, and that makes it super exciting.
I'm gonna ask you to do the handful, dosing of the rice then.
Okay, great. So you said 1 for 2?
Yeah, 1 for 2 for
That's
each
it?
person, plus 1.
Plus 1, of course.
Okay, and we'll do the The pumpkin is ready.
Pumpkin is ready, amazing. Nice.
I was looking at Enzo shouting, almost shouting at me, because it was almost going too far, but we're good, we're good.
This is good. So we added to the salsiccia and the rest on this side, yeah?
Shallot, yes, yes.
Okay, beautiful.
Very good.
Should I mix it together?
Yeah, yeah, go for it. I mean, my grandma used to say, never stop mixing.
Yes, okay, no problem. I can do that.
So,
beautiful.
and it's good. It's good. It's a good thing you do when you talk, right? Because it's easy to do. And
yeah,
you
exactly.
Can keep doing it, and it's,
this I can do forever, no problem.
So, Dessil, one other important thing of your job is, of course, that because on one side you've got your developers. We talk about the developers and so on, and the other side you've got the players, and you've got again very different types of games, and some of them are like very community oriented, where you have to please very specific number of people, and some others are more like, should I say, a bit more for like mainstream, so mainstream that you don't really have to, you know, convince players, but more like the mainstream media and so on. So how do you do that? How do you please your audience whilst keeping, you know, true to your mission, right? You know.
Yeah.
How much do you change opinion during the life cycle of developing a game?
It's so every single game we treat it as a completely different project. You know, like we don't have like a recipe and just apply it to all the games. That would be like really like the worst thing ever. You know, if we feel that it's starting to be a recipe that's just copy pasted on each game, this is like the worst mistake that you can do at Focus. You know,
I'll ask you to start putting the.
Oh yes, with pleasure. With my hands, or
I
can
think
take
it's gonna
that.
be too hot. Yeah, you take that. Yeah.
And the pumpkin looks delicious. I like that it's a little bit burnt on there. I'm sure it contributes to the flavor. And so that's the first thing. So the most important thing is to treat each game individually. And most of the assets and most of the work that we're going to do, going to do it just for that game. So if we know that the community of a certain game is very, very involved, like let's say for a Warhammer game, like Space Marine 2 is a great example. It's probably our most anticipated title ever. And we have a very strong Warhammer community that we love, you know, and every asset that we will release, we know that they're gonna dissect every single shot, you know. And shout outs to Chapter Master Valarak. I'm sure you know his channel.
The awesome Chapter Master, yeah.
And because, you know, like it makes me so happy to see like when this video when we released Space Marine 2, he's almost crying, you know, and I was about to cry with him because Space Marine was like so much dedication from Focus, you know, to make it happen. And so for that, we need to both please the community, making sure that they're gonna look at every single shot and every single like hidden little thing and Easter egg that we put in the game, but also the mainstream. The thing with Space Marine 2 is that it has a very mainstream appeal, and I'm pretty certain that a player like who plays Call of Duty or other big titles like that can find something that he will like in Space Marine 2. So we need to really find the balance where we communicate to the widest audience with something quite cinematic, and that doesn't have necessarily like too many complex concepts of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, because it might be a bit too niche for a bigger audience, but at the same time have some assets that are specifically dedicated to the 40K fans, because we are 40K fans too as well at Focus. So for us, we know exactly the type of stuff. So we try to have multiple layers, you know. A little bit like in a game where like your story layer, you have to have like a very simple layer that everybody can follow, and this one, it will be repeated to you throughout your progression, and then some smaller little pieces of information for the people who want to know more.
It's almost, sometimes it's the opposite as what we do, because for us the niche, you have to please the niche first, and then, you know, you can try and approach different audiences.
It's a very interesting thing. I think depending on the scope of the game and the genre of the game also, the more niche, like if it's a tactical or a strategy game, the more what you want is to content your core audience so that it creates a spike in the ocean of releases, and then they spike and flourish and convince other player.
Yeah.
But once you have like a very mainstream type of game, like a first-person shooter or an action RPG, then it's better to convince as wide as possible, because you can have very wide appeal on that, and then it will bring in the niche. So it really depends on the genre and the platform as well.
I'm gonna please my director here, because our water has turned orange, of course, because we put the pumpkin in. So it's time to come in and see what's happening here. We have a joke that's basically in every one of the episodes, we put something in the recipe that any true Italian cook would scream about, like, "This is wrong, don't do it." So we'll ask our viewers to spot what that was and write it in the comments. This is not only for Italian cooks. It's for everyone, right? Everyone can try and spot the difference. Maybe for the winner of the contest, we can give away a focus game.
Of course, with pleasure.
So make sure that you answer. Of course, always traveling, always seeing new people, and so on. And what I'm seeing, especially lately, is that our industry has always been accused of, oh, you only do sequels, whilst you are one of the few companies, except for maybe like a couple of occasions, you don't really do sequels, right? You don't really, and unless there is a true reason why you should do a sequel. Is there a part of a strategy? Is there part of a thinking of what how things should happen? Because it's now becoming kind of more mainstream that sequels are not the thing anymore. But you've been doing this forever, right?
Yeah, it's true. I think definitely, like, we're not gonna impose something on a game if it doesn't suit it. A sequel can make sense, first of all, if your first game was very successful.
Of course, yeah.
If there's a community around it, and also if there is a purpose to that sequel. Doing a sequel just for the sake of doing a sequel, I think can be a bit underwhelming. Now, when it contributes to going further into the story, like in the case of Plague Tale, which has a very, very strong narrative component, for us it was evident. And also the studio wanted it, and that's something that's very important. They felt like they hadn't told the story entirely, and they had new ideas.
Okay.
Again, we try to be very, very developer driven, So if a developer is extremely excited about creating a sequel because they feel like they have more that they can bring to it, like we did with The Surge 2, for example, then fine, let's see if we can find ways to make it stand out and different, But we're not going to do like some other companies do, where it's about, oh, we created those key component, let's milk them as much as possible, because most of the time what will happen is that it's going to be like a lesser experience than the first one. And also we love innovation, like we are lucky as a publisher that we can, if we find a good idea, we can work with anyone on the planet, and that's a strength that you have as well, but that is a bit more difficult to do when you are, let's say, like a big developer with a lot of franchises and games. Well, it's all internal. You don't publish other people's games, so you don't necessarily get nourished by what's happening in the pitches and all that. We receive more than 1,500 pitches every year that we have to review, And I mean, a lot of them, it's easy to say, okay, this is not for us. But a lot of them, they might be for us, since we do so many different genres. And the most important thing for us, like, it's first of all, like we get nourished by all this creativity, by all those exchanges, and also like we are able to completely. I mean, sometimes it's working with a new studio is a whole new adventure, like we did with Flying Wild Hog and the game Evil West. They were known for Shadow Warrior and of course other titles, and for us it was very refreshing, to see how they conceive things and what's their take, on creativity. So I would say that this is like a great generator of ideas and creativity, but I forgot exactly what was your question.
No, the thing is that it was about sequels, but what I find very fascinating about this whole industry is that, the big success, the biggest game can come from a, tiny 10 people studio, hidden somewhere you don't know about. and from the huge, thousands of people, involved in a game production and so on. And it could be, both of them could be equally successful. This cannot happen in anywhere else, right? If you have to make a movie, you've got at least to involve, X number of people, right? Well, making games is, can be as simple as, putting, a developer, a programmer, an artist, and a designer together, and they come up with very cool things.
It's incredible. And also there's one thing, is that the player's opinion and how they receive the game has much more impact than in the film industry, I want to say, because when you arrive on Steam, you're going to see the review, you're going to see like what the gamers think about the game. Oh, 90% positive, overwhelmingly positive. If I see a 95% positive game that has, let's say, more than 2,000 reviews, I'm like, okay, there has to be something incredible in that game, so I'm gonna try it, even if it's not my main genre. But when you go to the cinema, you don't see the user score on every single poster before you do it. So,
and especially you don't go to a genre that you don't like, in the first place.
And I would say that this definitely contributes, to the fact that some little gems can rise. Also, I would say there are a counterexample, like if you remember, like Blair Witch Project and things like that, where it was like sort of like the low-budget movies. There's a scene around it, but it's true that in the video game world, it's the fact that it's so, at least for digital distribution and especially for Steam, a bit less for
no
console.
barrier to entry,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Which makes it tough too. Everybody can create a game and put it on Steam, almost, but getting this attention is very hard, and we have to be careful with those success stories, and I'm sure you're confronted to that a lot, where developers that are newer, they're doing their first game, and when they look at references for the type of game they're doing, they will always give you the crazy success. Not even a AAA, but like, okay, we're doing something like Cult of the Lamb or something like XCOM
and they
or
sold
something like that.
1 billion units, and we can do the same. Yeah.
And it's our role, to also like share with them the knowledge that, okay, sure, there are some tactical games, for example, which like were extremely successful, but be aware that the vast majority of them, they don't necessarily find their audience. Exactly, And this is where a publisher has definitely a role to do, like, sure, you can have a couple of exceptions with people who create a little gem that arrived at the right moment at the right time. But the work of a publisher is to maximize the chances of your game.
I always say that. Our, having a publisher doesn't guarantee you success, but it increases your chances,
exactly.
by an order of magnitude, definitely. And developers, especially when they're first experience, it's always harder to work with a developer who released the game which was successful, because they think they can repeat that success, almost like for sure, and it's not always the case.
So many stories about that I've heard, where you do one like fantastic game, and it benefits from a very good hype and success, and then after that you try to do something new, and you realize that actually without all the enhancements and the work that a publisher can do, it's very hard to do something similar.
Is it, full disclosure, we're recording this in the morning, and it was too early when we started to get the wine in the glasses. So what time is it now, so we can see if we've got it, it's the right time for the wine. And we're going to leave this until the very last minute. So the last touch is we're going to put some Parmesan cheese to top it up, and in Italian we say mantecare. You can mantecare means you want to sort of add something that gels everything together.
Okay.
Now, then some people do it with the butter. Some people do it some cheese and such. I'm used to do it with Parmesan cheese because it's a bit salty as well. And because I don't put a lot of salt in the broth, it just adds this extra kick at the end.
That's good, because I was going to say maybe it lacks a little bit of salt, but I like when it's a bit salty. I was like, let's patch the game.
No, absolutely. And in France, you've got this thing where you have the salty butter, right?
Yes.
We don't use it a lot in
really?
Italy.
But it's very popular on our side, Years of experience.
That's easier than anything else, right? I've seen. We've had in the past guests that would struggle to open a bottle of wine, but you're proven to be very experienced in that.
Well, that's the problem, is that they teach it to you at school in France.
It's like part of the education.
It's like it's like a social pressure, you know, like how you like serve the wine and where you put it. So
That makes a lot
normally,
of sense.
didn't mess it too much. It's when like the curvature goes into the other direction. I think is where you should stop exactly the glass. Yeah.
You see, that's an expert tip. I usually just fill it.
Yeah, but it's good. This is so good.
Et voilà.
Et voilà.
Bon, and thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot, Marco. It was a pleasure. And yeah, this looks delicious. Cannot wait to eat it.
To focus and your future releases.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.